All right, let's dive into something that's been buzzing in the entertainment world lately, Starz' recent financial update. Now, at first glance, it might seem like just another earnings report, but personally, I think there's a lot more going on here. What makes this really interesting is how Starz is navigating the massive shift from traditional cable to streaming, and they're doing it in a way that's both bold and a bit risky. So, let's break it down. First off, Starz posted a revenue dip in the first quarter, which on the surface doesn't sound great. But here's the thing, this isn't just a random drop. It's part of a bigger strategy. What many people don't realize is that Starz is intentionally pulling back from the declining linear TV business to focus on streaming. Their OTT revenue stayed pretty steady at $221.3 million, while their linear revenue took a hit. If you take a step back and think about it, this is a classic case of a company betting big on the future. They're willing to take a short-term hit for long-term gains. In my opinion, this is a smart move, but it's also a risky one. The streaming market is insanely competitive, and Starz is up against giants like Netflix and Disney+. So, the question is, can they carve out a strong enough niche to make this work? Now, let's talk about the losses. Starz reported a widened net loss of $189.4 million, which sounds alarming. But here's where it gets fascinating. A huge chunk of that loss comes from one-off restructuring costs, specifically $147 million after ending a deal with Universal Pictures. From my perspective, this is less about financial trouble and more about Starz cleaning house. They're shedding old commitments to focus on their own content and reduce costs. What this really suggests is that Starz is doubling down on its independence, especially after separating from Lionsgate. They're not just another streaming service. They're trying to build their own identity, and that's a detail I find fascinating. Speaking of content, Starz is leaning heavily into its existing IP, particularly the Power and Outlander universes. This raises a deeper question. Can they keep audiences engaged with spin-offs and sequels, or do they need to constantly innovate? Personally, I think there's a fine line here. On one hand, leveraging proven franchises is a safe bet. On the other hand, it could feel stale if they don't bring something fresh to the table. The fact that they're pointing to strong audience engagement with shows like Fightland and Raising Kanan is a good sign, but it's also worth noting that engagement doesn't always translate to subscriber growth. What makes this really interesting is how Starz is balancing familiarity with innovation, something every streaming service is trying to figure out. One thing that immediately stands out is Starz's confidence in their financial trajectory. Their CFO, Scott McDonald, is talking about growing OTT revenue, expanding margins, and reducing leverage. In my opinion, this isn't just corporate speak. There's a real strategy behind it. They're raising their guidance and aiming for a 20% adjusted OIBDA margin by 2027. But here's the catch. They're doing this while investing heavily in content and restructuring. It's a high-wire act, and what many people don't realize is that this kind of aggressive pivot can either pay off big or backfire spectacularly. If you take a step back and think about it, Starz is essentially betting the farm on streaming, and that's what makes this story so compelling. So what's the bigger picture here? Starz is part of a broader trend in the entertainment industry, the shift from linear to digital. But what makes their story unique is how they're approaching it. They're not just following the crowd. They're trying to carve out their own path with a focus on cost-effective content and audience engagement. In my opinion, this is a make-or-break moment for them. If they pull it off, they could become a serious contender in the streaming wars. If they don't, well, let's just say the competition isn't going to wait around. This raises a deeper question for all of us as viewers, investors, or just observers. What does it take to succeed in this new media landscape? And is Starz's strategy the right one? Closing thought. Starz's journey is a perfect example of how risky and rewarding the streaming era can be. They're not just pivoting, they're reinventing themselves. Whether they'll come out on top is still up in the air, but one thing's for sure. This is a story worth watching. So what do you think? Is Starz on the right track? Or are they taking too big of a gamble? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you found this analysis interesting. Thanks for watching.